You're listening to the Clean Comedy Podcast with your host, James Creviston.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Clean Comedy Podcast. It's James, and today I have a great comedian who I want to call him a friend. I don't know if we're friends. I think we're friends. He might not think we're friends.
We're friends.
Okay, we're friends. I hope that we're friends. Probably one of the smartest people that I know, and not just because he's a doctor, like a real doctor, like a legit, like has a degree and all that stuff. Not like a guy who cracks your back or whatever. He does the real stuff. So, but he's very, very funny, very talented. One of my favorite people. His jokes are amazing. I'm going to add all this stuff in the show notes, but we're going to talk today. Please welcome Vien, the ComicDoc.
Yay!
So welcome to the podcast.
I don't know how many orthopedic, osteopathic, chiropractic doctors watch this, but
I know they're going to be offended.
Angry emails. They're a ferocious group of people. They're going to come for your back, or you're going to need care for your back, and then they're just going to be like, "Oh, you remember what you said about us?"
Well, I do have a chiropractor that I see like every month, so I always bust his chops about that. But he's a doctor. I just think it's funny.
You just mess with the wrong people. Back your life.
Hey, at least it's better than like messing with like your acupuncturist, right? Where they're just like, now you'll never walk again. Here you go.
Like, those needles are big. Like, oh yeah, we got special needles for you. Remember, we're not doctors.
So you're a doctor and you're a comedian. Let's just get your origin story. How did you did you start stand up while you were like in med school, or did you do it after you got out? Like, what's your origin story there?
I fell into a vat of electric eels. Isn't that how every origin story is? Or
yeah, chemicals, eels, all that kind of stuff.
I was tormented until I mutated, which isn't untrue. Okay, it's not true. I was always a fan of comedy, even at a young age when I didn't even understand the jokes. Like, I just grew up watching TV. And like all night long, all day long. And at night, this is in the 80s, when comedy kind of blew up. There were all kinds of comedy shows like Comic Strip Live, like Evening at the Improv, like all of these shows, like the Def Comedy Jam. There was just like always comedy. And so I watched it, and at the time I didn't even understand the jokes. It's just what you watched, and I think it sort of entered my brain. It was intriguing, like just a dude standing in front, or a girl, or a lady, or both, standing in front of people and then laughing. And I always wanted to be funny. I always like tried to be funny, like in social settings. But I never did it. I went I did the doctor thing because I'm Asian. It's what you're supposed to do. They don't tell you what the other choices are. It's like, would you like to be a doctor? And then it's like the question. So I went to med school, and one day, I don't know if it's like a midlife crisis I had, or, you get to a point in a career where things become sort of repetitive, like the challenges are gone, and, partially because I'm awesome. I'm like really, really good at it. And like Mike Jordan did baseball. It's kind of the same exact thing, So I did a class. I just wanted to try it. It was kind of a bucket list thing. I did a class, and the class had a showcase show. And literally, I almost had like an anxiety attack. Like, I almost like flaked out and didn't show up. It was terrifying. And as this unfolded, everything I feared was happening. Like, everybody was just bombing. It was just horrendous. But I, of course, I had a great set. By the way, I'm not really this arrogant. I'm just being, extra arrogant tonight for some reason. I had a good set. I actually had applause breaks. I really had like 3 minutes of material, but it ended up being like 7 minutes on stage just because of applause breaks. And I got hooked. And then it kind of became its own thing. I didn't even plan on ever doing it more than that one time. But then I went to open mics, and then people asked, like, I got a guest spot at a club on a real show, like the second time I did comedy, it was like an open mic contest, which I won, and of course that led to a spot on a show. From that show, one of the local headliners, he's actually a national headliner who just happens to be local. He saw me and started asking me to do shows with him, and now I that became another shows and other venues and other thing, and now I'm on the road every weekend doing comedy. So it's kind of a snowball going downhill.
And how long has that been? Like from when you started to now, like what's the time on that?
3 years and 10 months.
Nice. That is awesome. And you did Joker's Wild in the Bahamas, right? Is that right?
Atlantis
And that I know.
Bahamas,
yeah, that I know is like a huge deal. Like because they only book a certain amount of comedians every year for that. It's like coveted. I've talked to like old road dogs who that was like the pinnacle because they fly you out there. You're there for like a week. You do like 3 or 4 shows and they pay you a good amount of money.
It was probably the best to this day. It's probably been the biggest sort of honor because it's an international gig. You have to get a passport. They put you in this beautiful resort. They pay for everything, and it's hard to get into because there people who go there every year. They don't want to give it up. So you have these guys who've been going there for 40 years. So just to have the opportunity to be there, be one of the people who like slip through the cracks and end up being able to perform there is just great. You're there for 2 weeks, which is there's worse things than spending 2 weeks in a resort casino in the Bahamas.
Right.
So going back next year, just so you know.
Nice.
They didn't fire me. I'm welcome back. So that's also very affirming and fun. And you meet people from all over the world. These people come from Europe and they from Asia. They get off cruise ships. They come see you. So it's like a global audience. So it's a really cool experience. It really forces you to have like what's the expression? To really something with chops. Something about chops. Expression with chops.
Right. Yeah. You gotta have chops. You gotta be ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you do like so. So everyone knows we're in a writing group together. Robert G. Lee, who's been on the podcast a few times, is a mentor to us, and we go through a lot of stuff. And Vien, every time, I'm not kidding you, this is a real statement. Every time he comes to the group, he brings something that's just a banger of a joke, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong with my life? Like my jokes are never this good. Like I come with like these half-built, like crummy jokes that we refine later on, but yours, even in the like, if it's, I don't even know if it's crummy, but even in the beginning stage, it's already like set to a good place.
I think you're being kind because we're on the other person you're talking to. You can't be like, you're okay, you suck.
No, I would never say that, and I already have told tons of people about you, so I would never say that about you ever.
You're very kind. I think you're being unfairly modest about your own material. I respect your material. You always,
I appreciate it.
One, you bring more jokes than I do. Like I scrape together like one joke. Like I don't have the bandwidth to work on a lot of material. I don't have like a high volume mind just because I don't. So usually what you're seeing is that like it's a distilled thing where I've only been thinking about the one thing all week long. I kind of obsess and perseverate over a topic, and then generally because of the mind forces, it's a little bit further along because I'm only thinking about the one thing. I've noticed I have different, like this is what's fun about the group is that we all have different methods. You have a lot of volume. Every time you come, I'm always astonished. It seems like you have 10 minutes every time. I have like one joke and I'm like, tell me about this one joke.
But it's so good. Like you're so good. And you just used a word that I have no idea what it means. Like I don't know what it was. It was a word that I've never heard of.
I have one of those word calendars that's like the I'm better than you calendar. Like every word and then it tells me what it means and then I work it into sentence. And then that's how I affirm my superiority over all other people.
I love it. Now, I know you talk a lot about being a doctor, not a lot, but you talk about being a doctor on stage or whatever. And you've mentioned this before where people actually ask you to look at their stuff or whatever after shows. Every show?
Every show. super annoying. In case you're wondering.
I think you should. I had an idea for you. I don't know if you sell anything after shows, but you should just sell a Band-Aid that you signed that goes on people. Like, I've been checked out.
I was thinking old Band-Aids. Like,
oh, no, not old Band-Aids.
Discarded needles.
Used gloves.
Like gently used gauze.
I don't know how ethical that part is or whatever, but
the economy's tough these days, and medical supplies are so expensive. So secondhand medical supplies.
Well,
I think I'm onto something.
You are, or mask. I know masks are still like kind of a big deal, and doctors still have to wear masks when they're doing stuff. So a joke on a mask might be funny because, and then you're thinking like,
I use this side, just use the other side. It's.
So, oh my gosh. So now that you're touring, that's good. 3.5 years in, you're touring, you're going to places like the Joker's Wild, also which is huge, by the way. Like when I read about that back in the day, I was like, that would be a dream place to go. The fact that you went is mind blowing. That's amazing, and big props to you.
Thank you.
How much time did you have to do there? Like what was their time expectancy for that?
It's a standard show. There's a host that usually does about 15 minutes up front. I was the feature on the show, so I did 30 minutes, and the headliner does 45.
Okay.
It's a very standard comedy set.
Okay.
It's people don't have a huge attention span. They're ready to get to the casino. They're coming off a cruise ship, coming off a boat, so they don't want a 2.5 hour comedy show. So, yeah.
That's awesome. And 30 minutes in 3.5 years. Now, that is actually really good because a lot of comedians are still doing their 5, or maybe they have a tight 15 in that 3-year window. They're not doing it that fast. What do you credit with being able to build a set like that, and a strong set that you could feature with that quickly?
My comedy is experiential. It's personal. And I think the reason that my timeline is different is because I'm older when I started. I had more life experience. I have a different life and a different perspective. I think when you're young, you're 18, you're 19, you're doing comedy. I mean, the topics are always dating. They're always, we work stuff or whatever. Off-color humor is very popular in that age group.
Yeah.
Nobody's written on doctor humor. Like,
yeah.
I mean, there was Ken Jeong who was a doctor, who was a comic, but he didn't burn a lot of doctor material. So. No. It's sort of uncharted water, so it's kind of a lot of pasture for me. Yeah. I'm very observational with life. Like I'm paid to listen to people and observe and absorb. And if you kind of just turn your ear to the universe, you realize how many funny things happen in a day. Like I have a family, I have a culture, I have an upbringing. All of that is just fodder. All of that is stuff you can reach into the bag and grab. And once you have the tools, which we learn from people like Robert G. Lee, our writing groups, you just go, well, I have this thing about me that's different. And the more different you are, the more isolated you are, the more unique you are, the more you have to. So you don't get a lot of Laotian ear, nose, and throat doctor comedian. So that gives me sort of an unfair almost advantage perspective to draw from.
Yeah. Now, I thought of you this weekend. I had to do a show on Saturday. The comedians didn't the show started at 7. The comedians didn't show up. They weren't there at 7. They weren't there at 7:15. They didn't show up till 7:25. And so, and that was only the headliner. I was waiting for the feature, and I was hosting. So I had to go up and just go until the feature got there. So I just started rambling. But I started talking about when I dated my wife, and we had our first night together. And I said to her when I was going to sleep over, I said, "Hey, I just want you to know I don't snore." No idea why I said that, right? I go to sleep. I wake up in the morning. She has the angriest face I've ever seen in my life. And she goes, "You lied." I'm like, what did I lie about? She's like, "You snore." And she recorded it. And it sounded like a bear, like snoring, like a bear in a cave, just going off. and I found out that I have sleep apnea. And so I thought about you when I was talking about that on stage. I was like, oh man,
this is a philosophical discussion now. It's like, if you've never been with somebody, theoretically, how would you know you snore? Right?
Yeah.
If a bear poops in the woods,
yeah,
does it make a sound? That's the expression. Right. A bear poops in the woods, does it make a sound? Right? The same thing. How would you know you didn't snore? You lied with presumption.
Yeah.
I hope she didn't keep dating you. I wouldn't have. There's a trust issue at the beginning.
No, we're married now. 20 years. We're married. We're married. She puts up now I'm like a white noise machine in our house. Like if I'm snoring, everyone else can sleep, right?
Well, what's good about marriage is that if females cannot hear the husband and the father in the house, like there's a kind of deafness that develops. I have a teenage daughter, and I think I could bang a drum and she wouldn't be able to hear me. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have two of those. I have a 16 and 13-year-old, and it's like
the bills.
Yeah.
Cut off their phone and then you become very visible.
Yeah.
But as long as you pay the bills, completely invisible.
I know, do you ever text them and they just never, they leave you on red? Like they've never, like I text you 8 times. They're like, no, you didn't. And I'm like, yeah, I did. And then you find out like you're blocked.
You know, people who look at your social media, but they don't react. And then later on, they're like, oh, that was funny. Like my daughter is like that person, except with all forms of communication. I can send her the thing that makes me happiest or the thing that I think is the funniest in the world. And I'll have to check and make sure she got it. And I'll be like, oh yeah, it was great. Like, well, can you affirm me? Can you tell me you got it? Can you laugh emoji? I know you know how. I've seen you do it.
Yeah. And that's the best part is like, I think you're right with the age thing. We get to talk about things that are that have more experience. And for that set, I just started taking an improv class. I'm doing it like every Friday night now because I wanted to get kind of better on my feet. And that I just taken improv the night before, and I was like, I'm just gonna talk and see what happens here and what people laugh at. And they loved it. It was great. I was just kind of like real and let's talk about this. I talked about doing donkey calf raises. If you know what those, I don't know if you know what those are. You know what those are?
No, I have no idea what those are.
So it's you're doing squats. So you have like a weights on your shoulders, but you're bent over, and another man sits on your back while you stand on something and lift your calves up so that your calves get bigger from it. I wanted like big calves when I was like in the military, and so people would come into the gym and it's me and a 200-pound dude on my back and me doing donkey calf raises. It looks terrible. It looks like the weirdest thing you've ever seen in your life. And so I mimed it on stage and they were just dying.
I think the weirdest part is that you guys were in the locker room. I think that's
with just our underwear. Like just
yeah. If you were in the gym part of the gym, I think that would have gone over better. But
yeah.
That's like the point of gym is because they have weights and stuff and machines. Like I feel like your gym might be primordial, like primitive. If there's like you have to lift people.
Yeah.
I think that's where the very first gym might have been like that, like 1,000 years ago when men were still like we still lived out the doors.
Yeah.
But I feel like you need to find a new gym.
Well, I think that's CrossFit. Isn't that what CrossFit is? It's lifting other people up. Isn't that what that is?
CrossFit is like we can't afford a real gym, so there's just gonna be heavy all around. And you invent ways to do it. Like and there's no air conditioning. That's what.
Yeah. Oh, no air conditioning. That is so true. So, what is now that you've been doing it longer, you're going on the road more. Do you have like a favorite place that you like to go back to besides Atlantis? Like, is there like a club that you like to play a lot, or a place that you like to perform a lot?
Yeah, I like. I did a festival of comedy. The Laugh Factory in Chicago, and I loved it. I think that was probably the best set of my life. I mean, it's an environment where it's a big, beautiful theater, but it's also like a very professional audience. You know, people that go there. They know comedy. They know when you're clever. They know when you're hacky. It's a true audience. And so I just felt really like a pro there. I really like, there's a venue in Vero Beach, Florida. Sometimes these places sort of surprise you. They're kind of in the middle of nowhere and you don't have great expectations. It's a Comedy Zone venue, but it's in Vero Beach, the Riverside Theater. And it's gorgeous, beautiful venue. Like just probably the most beautiful venue I've ever been. Big, beautiful stage, beautiful lighting, those sorts of places. There's little clubs that sort of have a place in my heart. My home club is Coconuts, and it's a tiny club. It's probably 80 seats or something like that. But for me, it reminds me of like the original improv.
Yeah.
Where you just get like you just feel like you're connected to the audience. You feel like you're an old school comic. Like a grubby old club. Those are the places that I think of. My favorite places to be.
Now, what about, is there a, like, like with the Laugh Factory, is there like a state that you enjoy traveling to more where like you feel like they connect to you, like outside of Florida, like a place that you feel like they connect to you more, or not really?
I have, I seem to do really well in the Midwest. I think I've been to something like 15 states, and like half of my out of state gigs were in like Indiana, Ohio. I went to Omaha, Nebraska. I don't know if you've had this experience, but being booked as a comic is weird. You just sort of land in places. There's people that find you. Yeah. And so, and you would think that geographically you would just be popular where you are and spread out, but that hasn't been the case. Yeah. Like I've actually done very, very few shows in the Tampa Bay area, which is where I live. I live in Sarasota, Florida, but I've been to Indiana like 7 times. So I don't know. I guess I have that wholesome Midwestern vibe to me, even though I'm Laotian. They like their Laotians there.
Maybe you're the Laotian Midwestern. That's what they're used to.
Yeah, like it's kind of like there's this guy who goes to England, and he's like this West Virginia guy who plays like bluegrass music, C6 Steve, and he's like a platinum selling artist in England. So maybe I'm like a novelty in the Midwest. There's no Laotians.
Wow. What's funny is I think the only little bit I knew about Laotians was from King of the Hill. Do you remember that they had the Laotian neighbors?
Dude, that guy is like a cartoon of my dad.
Is it really?
Yes. Like if you met my dad, you'd be like, it's that guy.
Do you do stuff like about your dad in your act and stuff, and do you use the accent or anything?
My dad's a goofy character. He's just like this. He's hopelessly optimistic. Like he's just like always smiling, and like he could be working he's a machinist. He's working in his machine shop for like 20 hours, and you would think that he's at a party. He's just in there smiling. I'm like, Dad, this is miserable. He's like, it's not so bad.
That is awesome. Now, if you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice when you started comedy, like you say, hey, this is one thing I would do different, or one thing I would do now to get ahead, what would that one piece of advice be?
I think I would. That's a tough one. I think I would go with the current more. There's a lot of like really cool and positive experiences in comedy, but there's also some really negative and sort of oppositional sort of things, like a lot of rejection. Yeah. And you do beat your head against the wall a lot. You get fixated with a certain club, a certain venue. I really want to go here. I really want to go here. And, you just sort of might not have the right wavelength, or they just might not get you. And so I spent a lot of energy trying to get places that were just sort of arbitrarily important to me. You have to find your audience, and you have to find who wants you. And it's just much more rewarding. I guess it's like dating. Don't pursue someone who doesn't see your value, So I would have done that sooner. I had a lot of frustration with a club that I just didn't understand why I couldn't get into. Now I'm just like, screw you. I don't care what you say.
I'm good enough. People like me, gosh darn it.
Doggone it, people like me.
That's awesome. So where can people find you? Where can they find your comedy? Where can they, just so we have all that stuff? I'll put it in the show notes too.
I'm everywhere. I'm Mr. Worldwide. If that name is taken, that sounds familiar, but let's assume I'm Mr. Worldwide. My website is ComicDoc, comicdoc.com. I'm pretty much ComicDoc on every platform. TikTok, I'm at ComicDoc. Instagram, comic_doc. Facebook, it's Vien ComicDoc. or just my name, Vien Phommachanh, which you'll never find. Yeah. But ComicDoc, pretty much on everything.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thanks for always making me laugh. You're like one of my favorite people. I tell everyone about you. I'm like, oh, you guys got to check this dude out. So probably some of your followers are from me.
Steve, I feel the same way. Steve, you're one of my favorite people.
See, that's why I'm telling you guys. That's why I love him.
Don't discount yourself, Steve. Believe in yourself.
Yeah. See, you guys have to go check out his stuff. He has a lot of stuff on his Instagram that I watch and stuff, and then just great photos. The photos from Atlantis, like when you were there, I was like, oh my gosh, he's living the dream. He's living the dream.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been fun. Always fun talking to you.
Yeah.
In all honesty, Steve, you're one of my favorite people too.
All right, thank you guys. Thanks everybody for checking out. This is should be around episode 302. If you guys didn't check out episode 300, that was our big number that we just did recently. Things are going great. There's a lot of stuff that I talk about, my whole comedy journey there. So Vien, thanks for coming. Everybody, thanks for listening. Please like, subscribe, go check out Vien stuff. I'll put all the stuff in the show notes below, and have a good one. Bye.